the Akaku Community Television Studio. This is October 15th of 2012, and we are so happy to be here with you once again. Please join us. Come on closer to your television set. We've got a great show for you this evening with a very, very, very special guest. For all of you that do Facebook me and call in and talk story with me, I want to share your good news with the people of Kalana o Maui and Kauai'aina and all of our family and the family of nations out there. I'd like to let you know that there is a new hui in town. They're based in Makawao, and this is called the Maui Healing Network. Maui Healing Network, Aloha Maia o Kou Paulua. They meet every first and third Monday of the month and welcome you to join in as well and talk story, share healing, and talk about modalities and share the healing that various people in the hui participate in and have to share. And so this happens from 6 to 8 every first and third Monday night in Makawao. Go check out their Facebook page. It's called the Maui Healing Network, and I just wanted to share with you that this book was given out by a wonderful Reiki master, beautiful couple. Mahalo for your love and aloha. And we actually took some time to read from this book and to just share. So pass it forward, pass it on, and stay with the blessings, okay? So Maui Healing Network, mahalo to you all. And I used to be at the hui when it was on Wednesday nights, but it's Monday nights now. And so I miss you all so very much. But I know we can, have other huis together where we can continue sharing. Maui Healing Network on Facebook, check it out. Mahalo Brenda and everyone there. Thank you very much. And also the Abolish the PLDC movement. You guys are doing wonderful. I should say Mako, we're doing well. Kind of disconcerting though, a little news blurb came up on Facebook. Mahalo to Mahina. There is one meeting being held on November 13th in Honolulu at 10:30 a.m. on a weekday, right? At 10:30 a.m. in the morning for the state of Hawaii to present their revision after getting hammered by 3 counties and having a huge email pouring of objections come in within 72 hours of its announcement that they were even going to continue to consider the PLDC's purpose and intentions of continuing to displace other people's properties that do not belong to them. And we're going to be addressing that very shortly here with our special guest tonight. If you've been hanging out in the network channels and the social networks, you know what's happening. But I also want to continue on and let you know, I know, Ricky, that you're watching, so focus, right? And also Uncle Eddie, focus. Maui Nui Race is happening. Mahalo Kahana Canoe Club. Thank you so much for putting this on. Everybody out there, Uncle Bully, everybody in the family. Have a wonderful race. I'm going to miss it. It is October 19th through the 21st. Everyone have a wonderful race. Be safe out there. Nana Kanaluya. So you watch the waves. Time it perfectly, as perfect as you can. And then Hoiva'aya, Imua. So it's going to be from, and this is a great race, from Maliko Bay to Molokai, from Molokai to Manele Bay, Lanai, and then back to Maui, end up in Ka'anapali. Have a wonderful, safe ho'olaulea after that, okay? And then also, I just want to mention that coming back from my belly dancing class in haiku, it's a wonderful class. Mahalo Miraya. I saw Nelson Armitage on a machine. I'm not sure what it's called. It's probably a backhoe or something like that. Anyway, he was out there clearing up and cleaning up Maliko Bay. Mahalo to you. I wanted to give you a shout out and give you some credit here. That, these guys are working hard. They're the lawful Hawaiian government of Kauai'aina. They truly adopted and brought back the original language, the name of the what's known as Hawaiian Kingdom or Kingdom of Hawaii, and they're out there actually effectuating a shift and actually making a change take place right here physically. So if you see bradas out there and titas and sisters, go and join them. Take some lunch, bring some fruit up or something, and kanuka aina, get your hands in the soil and start planting something, okay? So mahalo to you and to everyone out there supporting. Also, the Sea Shepherd Hawaii chapter is officially up. Thank you very much. Mahalo, mahalo. Sea Shepherd Hawaii chapter is officially up. Go check out their Facebook page. Talkstar with Deborah Bassett. She's the new director of the Sea Shepherd Hawaii chapter, conserving, protecting, and defending our ocean resources. That's what it's all about. We're an ocean people. So malama malama, or malame malama. We can create the perpetuation of the sovereignty of the aina. Aina we use kind of generally to mean land only, but aina also means all that is feeding us, all that is multiplicitous, takes many forms, everything that is nutrition, food forest, ocean forest, all of it in a beautiful wrapped up burrito cycle of goodness, okay? Also, we're going to go over to Oahu and check out the Bridget Bardot. The vessel is in. If you have Ohana over there, I tell them to take a drive-by and look. Yes, it is legit. It is so legitimate. We are on. So check it out on Facebook, Sea Shepherd Hawaii. Just search for that when you're on doing your own cruising through the network system. And give a shout out, say hi, and ask for an application. We're looking for onshore volunteers. And if you want, you can probably jump on a ship too and take a cruise in the Antarctic for about maybe 3 to 6 months, I think. But Deborah can tell you more about it. And she, describes the accommodations as being lovely for the type of vessels that are out there defending your resources and conserving your resources. They're the only one on earth doing what they do. There's no other country, no other nation that sends out a navy to go and clean trash or to defend whales, who are, by the way, defenseless, from being slaughtered and just decimated. And what that leads to ultimately is the imbalance of our planet's system and ability to thrive, which comes back to, humans. What are we doing about it? Okay? So I'd like to say mahalo to every one of you out there. And once again, the cookies. I have to mention the cookies because I know you're watching. Bake more cookies. They're vegan, they're light, they're spicy, they're delicious, they're chocolate. The macadamia nuts over the top. You know who you are. I'm talking to you. All right. Okay. I have for you a special guest tonight. I'm going to try to convince him to move here and to live here forever for the rest of his days, open up a school, and start duplicating and replicating his brain. He is the only one. We're very, very honored to have him here. This is Dr. Richard I. Fine, Ph.D. in International Law. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you for having me here.
We're so blessed to have you. Thank you for being here and coming on the show, and you agreed to it last minute. It's wonderful.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, we have been in a couple of days of discussions and work on other matters. We were talking about, what would be the most important thing right now to share with people. And we were discussing, the current status of Kingdom of Hawaii and jurisdiction and Principality of Aloha. before we get into that, could you maybe share with the audience some of your background, and then also, Kalamai, we have a YouTube that we're going to show, actually. We're going to show a YouTube of you giving an interview about your experience. So would you like to go into that first, show the YouTube, and then people get that first, or would you like to talk about your background a little bit?
Your preference is my preference.
All right, let's go to that YouTube.
These are people that are supposed to uphold the law.
We weren't sure whether the sacrifice that he was making to himself and to our family was worth it.
This is actually the biggest judicial scandal and judicial bribery scheme in American history.
Mr. Fine had a miracle.
You were a lawyer, and you knew the judge in front of you was dirty. Would you blow the whistle on him? How about if you knew that calling him out would destroy your career, ruin you financially, and even wind up with you in jail, potentially for the rest of your life? This is the frightening story of Richard I. Fine and his incredible courage, who took on the justice system of California and lost everything.
We're dealing with a dysfunctional system and a judge that is dealing with political retaliation.
Dr. Fine accused Judge Jaffe, in fact all of the Los Angeles Superior Court judges, of taking illegal payments.
The county wanted to influence the judges to decide the cases in the county's favor.
Judge Jaffe hammered Dr. Fine with an indeterminate sentence of solitary coercive confinement in the Los Angeles County Jail.
They took me down through a back elevator in the courthouse and into a sheriff's car, and I was transported to the jail where I was booked, photographed, and go through the entire booking procedure, stripped down, given jail clothing.
Because of who he was, he had no choice but to stand up for real justice and pay whatever price was necessary.
I came here on March 4th, 2009, so I've now been here a year and 6 days. I've been in solitary confinement the entire time. I've been outside for 9 hours. I readily admit that I did not realize that the hatred of the judges who were getting the criminal payoffs was so great that they were going to do everything possible to keep me in here, and that the other parts of the judiciary was going to try and cover these payments up. The judges are so arrogant and feel themselves to be so above the law, they cannot deal with the fact that I have caught them with their hand in the cookie jar. They knew from day one that they were breaking the law, and they went ahead and they did it. They destroyed our judicial system. Sooner or later, I will win.
That is very powerful. Yes, that is very powerful. I'd like to read for you, for our audience, some of your experience that you have here, because it is just awesome, people. Richard I. Fine Strategic Consulting, which is what you do at present.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Well, this is a boutique consulting firm that specializes in solutions to issues of governmental and judicial corruption, abuses of power, and litigation. You've also, this was your firm, law offices of Richard I. Fine and Associates, also in LA. Forgot to mention that for all you LA people out there. Owned and operated, also this is a boutique law firm of up to 15 lawyers, specialized in antitrust, international and comparative law, class actions, diplomatic and sovereign immunity, terrorism, and government and judicial abuse of power. force the California government to return $1 billion of illegally used funds to the taxpayers, exposed and prosecuted $350 million of illegal payments to California judges, litigated IAM, is that how you say it? Or
IAM.
Or IAM
International Association of Machinists.
versus OPEC et al. The case against OPEC for affecting U.S. gas prices. You're an economic genius as well, right?
I don't know about that. I just
Advised governments and international entities. Was also the honorary consul general of the Kingdom of Norway in Southern California.
Yes.
Publicly and legally represented the Kingdom of Norway in Southern California. Served as the second vice dean, Los Angeles Consular Corps. The City of Los Angeles Antitrust Division founder and chief. Established the first municipal antitrust division in the United States. Special counsel to Governmental Efficiency Committee, Los Angeles City Council. Led investigation of former LA Mayor Samuel William Yorty and additional city administrative officer for government corruption. Wow, we just Swerdlow, Glickbarg, and Scheimer, attorney in LA, practiced antitrust and securities class action law. U.S. Department of Justice, Antitrust Division attorney, Washington, D.C., indicted and prosecuted GM and Ford for price fixing, investigated the pulp, paper, newsprint industry for its international price fixing cartel, investigated international mergers, represented the Department of Justice in its first appearance before the Tariff Commission, now the International Trade Commission. Worked as an attorney with Couder Brothers in London, practiced international and comparative law, participated with Alexis Couder and Lockheed too, in the negotiation and conclusion of the contract for the sale of Lockheed L-1011 aircraft to Air Holdings. Pretty big stuff here. And educated at the University of London, London School of Economics and Political Science, Ph.D. in law with specialty in international law. University of Chicago, Doctor of Law. University of Wisconsin, B.S., major in psychology. Hague Academy of International Law, Certificate of Public International Law Session, twice, 65 and 66. International University of Comparative Science, Luxembourg, Certificate of Comparative Law. The Faculté Internationale pour...
Du droit comparé.
Thank you very much. I am learning French, but not that confident yet. Diplomatic.
Diplôme supérieur de droit comparé.
My goodness. And has awards, received special congressional recognition awarded by the U.S. Congress in recognition of outstanding and invaluable service to the community. State Assembly Certificate of Recognition awarded for outstanding services to the community. California State Board of Equalization Resolution Certificate of Recognition awarded for sincere and grateful appreciation for outstanding dedication and service to the taxpayers of the community. Lawyer of the Decades 1976 to 2006, awarded by the California Black Republican Women's Council and the Judeo-Christian Alliance. Champion for the Court Reform, American Hero, awarded by Full Disclosure Network. Yes. Shall I go on? Academic,
Sure.
Professional, London School of Economics, yay. LA Advisory Committee, Claremont Graduate University, School of Religion, Distinguished Visitor. American Friends of the London School of Economics, Board of Directors, Chairman, Southern California Chapter. University of Chicago Law School Visiting Committee, member. Professional B&A Antitrust Advisory Board. You also helped to write the global antitrust laws.
Well,
You?
in my Ph.D. thesis, the thesis was International Comparative Antitrust Law. In the end, I did a treaty.
Whew. I'm sitting next to you. I'm sitting next to Dr. Richard Fine. All right, and to go on under professional, American Society of International Law, Regional Coordinator, Budget Committee, Executive Council, International Legal Materials, Corresponding Editor, Washington, D.C., American Bar Association International Law Section, Chairman, Committee on International Economic Organizations, State Bar of California, founder and chairman of Antitrust Trade Regulation Law Committee, and section organizer, and also of the International Law Committee. Los Angeles County Bar Association, founder and chairman of Antitrust Section, Executive Committee, International Law Section, the chairman, International Law Section. Also, Global Alliance for International Advancement. That's wonderful. And civic, you're right in there with the people and the community. Los Angeles County Music Center, Founders Circle member. Los Angeles World Affairs Council, International Circle member. Citizens Island Bridge Company, Board of Directors, Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Missing Children's Data Center, Board of Directors, LA. Retinitis
pigmentosa.
Retinitis Pigmentosa International, Board of Directors, LA. White House Conference on NAFTA, participant. Los Angeles Global Forum, moderator on the panel of African ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm so honored to be sitting here and just to have you with us and on our humble little show in our humble community television studio. You're a hero. You're like, you're such an inspiration out there.
Well, look, it's my pleasure to be out on Maui. Forget about all that other stuff. When I came out here and woke up the other morning in a beautiful breeze and fresh air, first of all, it was air that I couldn't see, which is something really important. And I took a deep breath and I said, I'm in heaven. So believe me, it's fully my pleasure to be here.
Nice. We're just so just overwhelmed. But you're here with a purpose. You're here to share some of your expertise with us.
That's correct. So let's get to it.
Okay. Well, you know, some of the topics that we bring out on this show has been about the royal patents. We've got one of the rare copy of an 1885 map. It's actually color coded, but we brought on our black and white tonight. Kind of rushing to come to the show after working. But this is what we're talking about mainly is we're talking about the royal patents, the jurisdiction over the royal patents, and how, you know, it's kind of a gray area for, you know, people in our audience, people that are, you know, on the land every day. We have really good people here that care about the Aina, that care about the land that feeds and also our water and our environment. But generally, people don't know how to get right to the facts. You know, there's always this question that always comes up. You know, is there a Kingdom of Hawaii does it still exist? Why do we have these issues of title today? And it is constant, you know. So I guess, you know, the burning question would be, you know, is this the Kingdom of Hawaii or is it the United States?
Okay. The answer to that is that, and I'll put it in the following terms. We have something known as the Principality of Aloha. And the Principality of Aloha declared its independence on December 12, 2011. Let's start with that. Okay. We'll call that the rebirth of a nation. And the reason I'm using the words, it's a rebirth of a nation, is because the Kingdom of Hawaii existed for a very, very long time. It literally existed from the time of the Polynesians, coming here, setting up land, and forming a kingdom, which later became known in, shall we say, colloquial terms as the Kingdom of Hawaii. Now, I'm not going to go through the history because you know it far better than I do, so there's no sense having me deal with those items. But ultimately, what you do have is you have the United States, and we won't even use the words United States. You have individuals coming in from the United States that come in and occupy the land. That occupation throws out the queen, and I'm using the words throwing out. I mean, you actually have the queen saying, well, I agree to this, but anyone that agrees to something under duress is not going to be considered to have really made an agreement. And later, what you have is you have the United States President and then the Congress going along with what is known as an annexation. And that is subsequently followed by a vote for a territory and then becoming a state. Now that's a thumbnail sketch, maybe not totally accurate, but fairly close to a series of events that happens. Now let's look behind that and say what really is taking place. What really happens underneath this is that with the existence of the Kingdom of Hawaii, you have what are known as royal patents. The royal patents declared who owned the land. So you have two things that are taking place. On the one hand, you have the royal patents right here saying these are the people that own the land. And over here, you have political events. Now let's deal with the royal patents first. The royal patents, interestingly enough, are written. And you can trace these royal patents from the time that they were written all the way down to today, where you can go here on Maui, pick a lot, I don't care what lot it is, anywhere, and you can trace that lot back, and that lot will either fall into a royal patent or it may end up being something that was not owned by the Kingdom of Hawaii. It's going to be very rare that it wasn't. Or that lot may have been sold by a descendant of the royal patent, at which point you'll be able to find that out. So we know that we have a paper trail from the royal patent down all the way to the present owner. Now, the other thing that we have is we have another very interesting thing. When you buy a piece of property, you get a title policy. Take a look at your title policy. And what you are going to find is that that title company is not insuring that lot against the claim of the native Hawaiian. Now, what is the claim of the native Hawaiian? The claim of the native Hawaiian is coming out of the royal patent. Now, why am I going through all this? It's a rhetorical question. And the reason for it is because it says who owns the land. Well, we've effectively established that the land is owned by the royal patent and the devizee, or the descendants, of the people of the royal patent, unless it was sold by one of these descendants. Now let's shift gears.
Okay.
Let's take a look at what happened politically.
Okay.
Politically, we have a group of people that came in. They stood in front of the palace. They created a problem. They created their own government. They dispossessed the queen. They then created the Republic of Hawaii, and then they created the territory of Hawaii, and then they created the state of Hawaii, and they got the U.S. Congress, first the U.S. President and the U.S. Congress, to go along with them. Now, what land were they working on? Because, see, these people that were standing out there didn't own that land according to the royal patents. So we have an issue. Did they physically come in and take over the land by armed forces? Well, they didn't, because
No
you
war.
didn't have a war.
That's right.
So they didn't come in and conquer the land. So they established a government over land that they didn't own. Now, what does this really mean? Well, in a way, it all came to pass 100 years after it happened. I'll use the words the takeover. The takeover occurred in 1893. In 1993, you have the United States Congress coming in and they pass a law. They call it Public Law 103-150. And effectively, what that law is it recognized and apologized for the illegal invasion and occupation of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Now, one of the important points of that particular law, and by the way, you can read the whole thing, but I'm just going to give you just really one of the most short paragraphs of it. And that really paragraph says, whereas the native Hawaiian people are determined to preserve, develop, and transmit to future generations their ancestral territory and their cultural identity in accordance with their own spiritual and traditional beliefs, customs, practices, languages, and social institutions. And whereas in order to promote racial harmony and cultural understanding, the legislature of the state of Hawaii has determined that the year 1993 should serve Hawaii as a year of special reflection of the rights and dignities of the Native Hawaiians in the Hawaiian and American societies. And it goes on to say that they come on to say, what are they going to do about this? It says the Congress, on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the illegal overthrow. Now this is important because we now have the Congress recognizing something. The illegal overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii on January 17th, 1893 acknowledges the historical significance of this event, which resulted in the suppression of the inherent sovereignty of the native Hawaiian people. These are really powerful words, because the suppression of the inherent sovereignty of the native Hawaiian people recognizes and commends the reconciliation initiated by the state of Hawaii, the United Church of Christ with Native Hawaiians, and this becomes important, apologizes to Native Hawaiians on behalf of the people of the United States for the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii on January 17, 1893, with the participation of agents and citizens of the United States and the deprivation of the rights of Native Hawaiians to self-determination, expresses its commitment to acknowledge the ramifications of the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii in order to provide a proper foundation for reconciliation between the United States and Native Hawaiian people, and urges the President of the United States to acknowledge the ramifications of the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii and to support reconciliations between the United States and Native Hawaiian people. And then it defines Native Hawaiians means any individual who was a descendant of the Aboriginal people who prior to 1778 occupied and exercised sovereignty in the area that now constitutes the state of Hawaii. Now this becomes interesting. They say nothing in this joint resolution is intended to serve as a settlement of any claims against the United States. Now nobody's making any claims here because, once again, this becomes interesting. What are we really talking about? We're talking about the patented land. So you have, in 1993, the United States coming in and recognizing that the land that we are talking about had an illegal overthrow. They recognize that the land was sovereign to the native Hawaiians. So we have literally an admission of what is taking place at that point. Now, you have, at that same point in time, you have a Senator Slade Gorton, who said in the United States Congressional Record, the logical consequences of this resolution would be independence. So it is now recognized that you have independence that is taking place. In fact, independence really never died.
It's true.
You had independence of the land all the way through. So what did you actually have here? What you actually had is you had what would be called a form of colonialism. You had a group of people coming in on land that they didn't own, establishing an administrative machinery and an administrative bureaucracy over land that they didn't own. Well, the chickens came home to roost in 1993. So now the only logical result, as Senator Gorton says, is independence. It's really coming back and declaring the independence over that land. And that is what took place with the Principality of Aloha on December 12, 2011. They established the Principality of Aloha, whose name in the Hawaiian language, and pardon me if I murder the language, is going to be Ka Moku Aina Mo'o Aloha. It's pretty bad,
That's
but it's my
good.
best try. Okay,
Right.
now, what is the territory of the Principality of Aloha? Because if you're going to have a sovereign nation has to have territory. What land are we looking at? You have to be able to describe this land in metes and bounds. Now, I hope everyone knows what metes and bounds are, but if you don't, metes and bounds means that the land is at such and such a place, such longitude, such latitude, and it has these metes and bounds, and this is what it looks like.
Directions, and
Yeah.
it's a
So-
survey.
It's a survey, real simple, simplest way of putting it. Well, the metes and bounds are set forth in the royal patents. If you've ever looked at a royal patent, you're going to see that the metes and bounds are set forth in the royal patent. So you know that whatever is in the royal patent is the geographic area of the Principality of Aloha, which basically is subsuming the Kingdom of Hawaii, because the Kingdom of Hawaii has not yet declared its independence officially. They have not come out with the resolution. Principality of Aloha has, in a sense, taken care of that. Even though everybody works together, you don't have that official statement having come out as of yet. I would expect after this show it might come out pretty quickly.
If the diaspora finally unites.
That's right. Things
Yes.
will unite.
It'll happen.
Now, what happens once someone declares their independence? The next thing that takes place is you seek recognition from international organizations. And that is what has happened. Legal documentation has been sent to the United Nations Depository, to His Excellency Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, to the Security Council, to other states and nations and organizations of interest. And this is ongoing. As of the present time, recognition has been extended by various international organizations. The United Micronations Multi-Oceanic Archipelago, the International Peace Commission, the United Nations Global Compact, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and what are some of the others?
Also, the International Environmental Sciences Institute and the Global Tourism, well, the Global Ecological and Sustainable Tourism Council.
Okay.
We're a
Now,
member.
the difference, we have two types of international organizations. The ones that I mentioned here are actually what we call international organizations comprised of nation states. And I think the ones you mentioned are also nation states.
Yes, they're not NGOs.
Okay. NGO, by the way, means non-governmental organizations. So you have organizations comprised of nation states have recognized the Principality of Aloha. The other thing is that we have various individual nation states. The nation of West Papua New Guinea has recognized it.
And we had one of the government representatives on the show via Skype a couple of weeks ago.
That's right. And we also have a second nation state that recognized it, and I have that.
I think it's up on your...
Yeah, it's on my second page. Here we go. The Republic of Cabinda. So we have, at this point, we have two nation states that have also recognized the Principality of Aloha. So what we have taken place is that the Principality of Aloha is receiving recognition throughout the world. The process is beginning. It's a very long process. There are approximately 182 to 185 countries in the world. So it's going to take time as these various countries get together and begin to do the recognition. The next thing that happens after you have the recognition taking place is you then go on to look at what is the relationship going to be with the United States.
Yes.
And this becomes the burning question.
Right.
Okay. The relationship between the United States and the Principality of Aloha is a relationship between two sovereign nations. Now, here we're going to come back to U.S. Public Law 103-150. Because that, even though it's a resolution, it's a law. And being a law under the United States Constitution, that law has to be enforced and has to be obeyed by every state. A lot of people forget about this. This is called the Supremacy Clause. And I'm going to read it for you, just as a little reminder. Article 6, Clause 2 states, "The Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land." And listen to this. "And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding." Now, what does that mean? That means that what was said in Public Law 103-150, which is the admission of the illegality of the takeover of Hawaii, is binding upon every state judge, from a Superior Court judge sitting in Maui all the way up through the Hawaiian Supreme Court. Okay. Now, what is this going to mean in practical purposes? What it's going to mean in practical purposes is what we call jurisdiction. What is the jurisdiction of these courts? Since the Principality of Hawaii is a nation and its boundaries are comprised of the land that are in the patents, or the land that we can go on this map and we can literally go piece by piece by piece and tell you where each parcel is, those courts don't have any jurisdiction over any piece of land that is in those patents. Now, I'm going to give you an example. In the continental United States, we have what are known as Indian tribes. The Indian tribes are sovereign nations. These Indian tribes were taken over. They were overrun, by force by United States troops, and their land was taken. But they were recognized as sovereign nations. They ended up signing treaties and compacts with either the federal government or with the states, and they have what are known as reservations. Those reservations are sovereign nations. Those sovereign nations have their own courts, tribal courts. They have their own legislatures. They have their own taxation systems. And what occurs on those lands, the United States government does not have any control over other than what is given by treaty between the sovereign nation and the United States. The same situation happens with respect to the Principality of Aloha. And the Principality of Aloha is in exactly the same situation as Switzerland and the United States. As a sovereign nation, it is separate territory,
Yes.
not controlled by the United States. So therefore, when the United States says that it wants to exercise control over that territory, it can't. Okay, now let's take this down to what is going to be the practical situation.
Okay.
And I'm going to put it in the terms, there are going to be two types of situations where this is going to arise. One, it's going to arise on a fight between somebody who says that they own land that is owned by a Native Hawaiian through a patent, and this other person says that they got the land through a different way, maybe, shall we say, by a descendant of some of the people in the overthrow who ended up and grabbed the land and through some sort of fraudulent conveyance ended up taking that land and then selling it down the line to the person that owns it today, who's now going to take a look at their insurance policy and suddenly realize that they don't have an insurance policy that's guaranteeing title against the Native Hawaiian, and they're going to end up in a court, and it's going to be what is called a quiet title action. And they're going to come into court, and they're going to say, I have title over this particular piece of property, and the Native Hawaiian's going to come in and say, court, guess what? This is sovereign territory, the principle of Hawaii, principle of Aloha. You don't have jurisdiction to decide this issue because I am not consenting to your court. And you can't get jurisdiction over me if I don't consent. You clearly don't have jurisdiction over the land, so therefore you don't have jurisdiction, and if you don't have jurisdiction, anything you do is void.
And there is no treaty.
And there's no treaty, no nothing. So consequently, what takes place is that the judge, and I'm going to anticipate this because judges are arrogant, the judge is going to go in and make a decision, and that decision is either going to end up getting appealed all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, or the judge is going to end up being smart because he's going to be looking at Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution. He said, well, right, I don't have jurisdiction over this, and therefore I can't decide it. You have to go to the court of the Principality of Aloha because they're the ones that have jurisdiction over the land. That's going to be one way of dealing with this. Another way of dealing with this is going to be that the Principality of Aloha is going to sign on to the International Court of Justice and is also going to sign on to the Hague Convention for Reciprocity of Judgments. Someone's going to come into the court of the Principality of Aloha, is going to get a judgment, and what is going to take place is that the Principality of Aloha is then going to go in to the International Court is then going to enforce that judgment through the Hague Convention on the reciprocity of judgments, and is then going to go through from the Hague Convention into the United States Court, who has to enforce the judgment. The United States is going to go crazy. But that is going to be the correct way of doing it, because the United States may have signed on to the reciprocity of judgments. If they signed on to the treaty, and if they signed on bilaterally with the Principality of Aloha, that judgment can be enforced. The United States may not necessarily sign on with the reciprocity with the Principality of Aloha. A third way of what may happen is the Principality of Aloha may sign on to the United Nations conventions and in that way opt in to use the International Court of Justice. Now, the United States has not signed on for compulsory jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice, so when the Principality of Aloha brings a case in the International Court of Justice on behalf of its people, the United States may say, no, we don't want to be involved in that case, at which point the case won't go forward. On the other hand, the United States may just say, well, okay, we've got a problem here, and they might decide to be involved, possibly because of the fact of Public Law 103-150, where the Congress has already said that they've agreed that everything has been wrong. They might just decide to be good about it. Who knows in today's world whether that's actually going to happen. But this gives you a certain amount of the bases, and I use the word bases as plural because you have various remedies that are going to take place when faced with a local judge who doesn't want to go along with this. Now, the second thing that is going to happen is going to be a criminal situation. Let's say something happens on the land of the Principality of Aloha, and suddenly the United States wants to enforce its criminal laws on the land of another country. Well, the United States doesn't have jurisdiction to enforce its criminal laws on the soil of another country. There are certain situations in which the United States could do something like that, but that's going to be something where it has an effect upon the United States. One example are the extraterritorial effects of the antitrust laws. We'll take the case that I litigated, the OPEC case. OPEC is a cartel. OPEC made its decisions in Vienna. The OPEC nations got together in Vienna and they decided to fix the prices of oil. Now, by doing that, they had a direct effect upon the gasoline prices in the United States. So therefore, by having that direct effect, we could file a lawsuit in the United States because what they did in Vienna directly affected our gasoline prices here because crude oil is converted into gasoline and the gasoline prices went up. So when you raised the barrel of oil by $1, you saw it literally in your gasoline price going up. The end result of the OPEC case was that the Ninth Circuit said that yes, it's a price fix, but we're not going to get involved because of the Act of State doctrine because it interferes with our foreign relations. And granted it did because we wanted to, our government, President Carter at that time, wanted to suck up to the Arabs. So that was the interference. If he had more of a backbone, we might have had a different situation. So there was the interference. But what happens with respect to the Principality of Aloha, what is going to be the effect of something that happens on the land of the Principality of Aloha that's going to affect the United States? There aren't too many things that you can really think of. The only thing that comes to my mind really at the present time is that if someone stole a car in what is a geographic area that is not the Principality of Aloha, and they drove it into the geographic area that is the Principality of Aloha, you have the concept of what is known as hot pursuit. If the police were chasing the stolen car and it went into the Principality of Aloha, they basically might claim that on hot pursuit, they might have the right to go after the guy. However, that doesn't really work too well between nation states. So that's your second thing, just giving you some of the things that are involved. But let me jump subjects with you and go to what did the United States Department of Justice really say with respect to the takeover. Because, we have the Congress saying one thing, but, these guys are politicians. Albeit, what they said is the law. So we'll look to another source. We'll look to the Department of Justice. They're supposed to be a little bit more independent. And what they say, and this is an opinion that came out on October 4th, 1988, and it was an opinion given by the Department of Justice to the Department of State, and it was regarding the ability of the United States to go beyond the 3-mile limit to annex territory going out to 12 miles and also going on to annex further territory. And if you get to that opinion, and I'm really looking at pages 20 to 22, they go out and they say that when the United States did their joint resolution in 1898 to annex Hawaii, they claim that that resolution was illegal. It didn't have any backing in the Congress's ability for annexation, because that ability can only be done by treaty, and there wasn't any treaty, and the Congress really didn't have the right to do legislation to annex anything outside of the United States. So they couldn't do it that way. Then they're dealing with the ability of the president to go out and wage war. Well, the president really doesn't have the ability to go out and do that and go in and invade Hawaii. So they talk about the fact that whether the actual invasion of Hawaii was correct and whether the president did the correct thing. And they say, no, the president couldn't do that. So there was no precedent at all
Dr.
for the invasion of Hawaii.
Excuse me, Dr. Fine, and don't you forget it. We are down to the wire. This is the ending of the show, unfortunately, for this evening. But thank you for joining us. We're going to be back again live October 29th. We're going to be talking with Lokahi. Mahalo, brother. You're out there and actually affecting some change and making some good things take place with taking care of the senseless killing and culling of the deer on the island. Let's create food. Let's create goodness for one another. And let's just bless. We are so honored, and thank you once again, Dr. Fine, for joining us here tonight. This is an excellent interview. Thank you so much. We're going to show this out on YouTube, and we're going to share more with you. Get down to the facts. Don't be afraid to stand on the facts, and take it all away right there. You want to say any mahalos or aloha to your family?
Well, to all my family, thank you very much for supporting everything. And to my wife, enjoy Hawaii.
Yes, we're going to have dinner soon and take a ride on a boat.
Okay. Thank you again for having me here.
Thank you so much. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Ahui ho.